We are thrilled to have you here joining us for our first panel on Get Health Savvy. Savvy Ladies, as many of you might know, is a 501 nonprofit where we offer these types of events and programs and panels for you to learn and continue asking questions. We have a helpline. Many of you have used our helpline, but feel free to come back to the helpline with any financial questions that you might have. Our goal with Savvy Ladies is to reduce your financial anxiety, build your financial confidence. That's what we're all about today, especially talking about a healthy mindset. We are thrilled with you see our wonderful group of panelists and moderator, Diane Harris, who is, it's just a treat to bring you this amazing rock star panel. I want to also thank our sponsors. We couldn't do it without our sponsors and supporters. Hightower has been a terrific sponsor across the years and continues to support Savvy Ladies. It is a shared mission, and I love that they're about well-being rebalanced. And Barbara Archer, who's joining us, leads one of their podcasts. The Women's Bond Club is a supporter of Savvy Ladies. We're a recipient of a grant from them, and we are thrilled to have Louisa, who is a Women's Bond Club member as well, joining us. I'm going to take a moment and introduce all of our panelists and start with Diane. Diane is our moderator tonight, and I am just thrilled and delighted that she said yes, because her schedule is so busy. And she and I chatted, and after a couple minutes, it was a hard, sure yes. And I really thank you, Diane, for committing your time and working with us and the panelists to set up tonight. You know, you wrote an article that really hit home for me, and you have such an amazing background. You are an award-winning journalist, and your recent gig was you were the deputy editor of Newsweek, the famed magazine. You are really a deep background in personal finance, women's financial wellness. You've talked about technology, health, culture, and entertainment. But most recently, since you've now moved on from Newsweek, you're writing for Time magazine, and you wrote an article that was about, is money making you sick? And when I read that article, that was my impetus for reaching out to you. You and I have known each other, but I wanted to reach out to you because that is what we're talking about tonight. How is money making us sick? How can we move forward and not have the anxiety that money can bring to many of us? And how do we fix those situations and have a better mindset moving forward? So again, Diane, thank you so much for moderating. So pleased for you to lead this discussion. Moving on, we have Raquel Wilson, and Raquel is a junior board member of Savvy Ladies. And not only am I so pleased that she's on our junior board, but she's also done some amazing work. And she's coming to us from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is amazing. I'm just thrilled that we are sharing and showcasing women from across the US with us tonight. Raquel founded Raise the Bar Investments, as well as most recently For Our Last Names, which is an app that is empowering people to bridge the gap between education and investing. Because we know, especially at Savvy Ladies, that the game changer for women is investing, how to move forward from just saving to investing. Well, Raquel has done that, and she's bringing that to women because that's what she's about. And I love that what she does and how she signs her emails is in abundance. That to me is so meaningful. And that is what she's about. She is about building abundance with the people she works with. So Raquel, thank you for being here tonight and representing our junior board as well.
Thank you for having me.
Barbara Archer has been with Hightower, and she is a host of a podcast called Keeping the Well and Wealthy with Hightower. She is spot on speaking about the generations and the change over generations of what it means to have a healthy mindset. And I think it's so valuable and so important how that Barbara, when she shares her story, it is so interesting. She has been an active supporter of Savvy Ladies. You've been on a panel like this before last year, and it was so engaging for so many women to feel connected to you because, as we said, we go through the ages and stages of understanding money. and you have that wisdom to share with us. So thank you so much for being part of tonight's panel.
Thank you, Judy.
Louisa Baker comes to us from the Women's Bond Club, but also she works as her day job with Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management. She's the Business Development Director. I met her most recently, and she is a rock star. She really is coming to us again from, the Florida area. I love that we're representing women from across the country. She is managing approximately with her team 5.8 billion of high-end ultra wealth net individuals and their families. She understands what it means to manage money for women and their families, as well as for nonprofits and companies. So she has a broad understanding to share with us tonight. She is really passionate about financial literacy, and as I said, a member of the Women's Bond Club. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
And then Lissa Prudencio, did I pronounce it correctly? Because I always butcher it, but thank you, Lissa, for being here tonight. Lissa is a Savvy Ladies volunteer on the helpline, but she is also an amazing, amazing woman who is in the social space talking to clients. She founded just recently through COVID, Wealth for Women of Color, which is a social media platform and her business where she is empowering women of color to take action toward building their wealth. She's a first-generation Filipino. She has a lot of experience to share. She came up through her career working at great businesses and icons like Google and YouTube. She knows what makes a business rock through SEO, digital marketing, media. So she is a force to be reckoned with. And I love, Lissa, that you say wealth is what you keep. And that is brilliant. So without further ado, Diane, I'm going to turn it over to you and we'll start our conversation.
Thanks so much, Judy. And again, I appreciate the invitation to be part of this event. I am a passionate advocate of financial wellness for women and a huge fan of Savvy Ladies and your mission and how you go about it. And it's an honor to be here. And it's an honor to be here with this incredible panel. I've had the chance to speak with everybody on the panel, and they are all amazing, and they will have amazing insights to share with you on this incredibly important topic. So before I toss to the first question, I just want to let everybody know that, if you are feeling stressed about money, you are not alone. Money stress is the leading cause of stress, the top cause of stress in the United States, according to the American Psychological Association and a ton of other research. And women feel it much more in greater numbers and more acutely than men do, which I figure doesn't come as any surprise to any woman who has ever dealt with money. It may be just simply that we're more in touch with our emotions about what money does to us. And it's not just our financial well-being that's at stake, because there's a lot of research that also shows that money greatly affects our physical health and our mental health. So there's a lot at stake for all of us. The good news is that we're all in it together, and that, as you will learn from this panel and all the great advice they have to give us, that there are some really simple, practical steps that we can take to get to a financially healthier mindset. So that's just the sort of level setting that I wanted to begin with. And I'd like to start by asking everyone on the panel briefly, because we have a lot of ground to cover, so briefly, to talk about their own financial journey and how they evolved to a financially healthy mindset and what we mean by that phrase. So Barbara, can I ask you to kick it off? I'm going alphabetical.
Happy to. So I worked my way through school, and one of the first things, and I see we have some younger people on here, one of the first things you all have to do in any job is negotiate your first paycheck, right? And not just when someone offers you a job, you say thank you. So I learned that pretty early on when I found out that a gentleman doing the same job as I was getting paid significantly more dollars. And that was very unsettling for me. So I spent the whole night thinking about how I was going to deal with it, going to my director to find out about it, how to handle it. And what I decided to do was to just walk in. Now, this is many, many years ago, ladies. This is back in the 70s. And I was the only woman in the entire organization. It was a General Motors manufacturing plant, and it was me and the guys. There wasn't even a woman's restroom. So I walked into the director and I said to him, I understand there's been a clerical error, and I'm going to leave my paycheck here, and I know you'll get it corrected for next week, because the fine company of General Motors would never discriminate against a woman doing the same job. Thank you. Have a nice week, and I'll pick it up next week. I walked out and I thought, okay, I'm either going to come in Monday and have lost my job, or I'll get some more money. The difference today is I would have asked for the back pay, right? Because you're all smart young women. Back then, I was just happy. I thought I was making a lot of money. And then I found out I could have been making more. So that changed my mindset, because I was paying school loans. I paid my way through school. I was supporting myself. And I think it's just having the confidence to understand that we can take care of ourselves and we can control our money. And so we just have to buck it up and stand up there and ask for it. So starting out, that was my first real learning experience, is ask for what you want.
That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary that you were able to do that. I mean, that's extraordinary to do at any age. It takes guts, but especially when you're just starting out. Louisa, can I toss to you now?
Of course. So I think there's also a difference with the way that a lot of Americans think about their finances as opposed to people from different parts of the world. So I'm originally from Colombia. I was lucky enough that both of my parents actually worked in finance. So I felt that growing up, I heard a lot of the language that I work with now, but even then, I think very differently about my personal finances now than I did when I was younger. And in my previous role, where I worked as a financial planning director for Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management of all of Miami, I actually worked with hundreds of families from Latin America and realized that it wasn't just simply my family. It was this invisible string that kind of connected us all, rooted in a lot of history. So oftentimes speaking with clients, I found that there was an inherent distrust of banks, namely because of the numerous bank defaults in Latin America and incredibly high interest rates set by our central banks. So rather than placing your money in what you would typically think is a safe haven like a treasury, because of examples like the Argentinian bond default of 2020 and other defaults that happened in Latin America, people found that to be riskier than investing in a business or buying real estate. So the way that we accumulate wealth is very different than what you would think of as a traditional American investor. The market, until recently, we actually couldn't invest in the American market. So the market of our home countries was seen as speculative, overly risky. So more money was placed in fixed income. So because of this, there's a much smaller culture that I still see now, even with younger generations who have learned from their parents about what it means to save for retirement, whether that's to start early or that you will eventually acquire real estate, start a business, pass that down to your children. And then the assumption is that your children will take care of you in their old age, along with a stipend from the government. So my mind shift has obviously completely changed because I do have access to the American banking system. And at this point, I've built up thousands of financial plans. So I understand that it's more risky not to invest in the market for the long run for your goals than it is to keep your assets in low yielding, safe investments. But it's important, I think, to understand the cultural differences that we may have that are embedded in historical examples that we necessarily don't really understand why our parents think that way, but it's because they've learned through experience. So that's a little
Yeah,
bit
and we're going to
how
talk a lot more about that. I think the influences of our family, of our culture, of our community, even the era in which we've grown up, sort of like what we see around us. Lisa, how about you? Take us to
Yeah,
your journey.
yes. So to touch on what Louisa said, like I come from a first generation American background. My parents were immigrants from the Philippines. So my mindset shift, first and foremost, is never was a clear scarcity to abundance mindset. There was no moment at any point in my life where things just changed. It's been a constant dynamic changing shift into becoming the person who I am now, who I identify as having a healthier relationship with money. And I think a lot of that came from building awareness about those cultural things, but also just all the messages we get from society and becoming proactive about changing what doesn't serve me. And so a big way that I've shifted my mindset over the years has been to catch limiting beliefs in the flesh, like when I see them. For example, like thinking I was never going to get out of debt, or thinking that I couldn't stick to a budget, thinking I could never understand the stock market. It's once I let go of those limiting beliefs and was proactive about navigating ways to overcome them, that's where I really started to see the mindset shift over the last, I think I'd say now I've been on this journey for the last 5 to 7 years in my 30s. So I spent my whole 20s sort of being lost. The one other thing I do want to point out is money wasn't what changed my mindset. I made more money early on in my 20s and it didn't change a thing. I still overspent, but I still felt frugal. I still had a lot of these habits that I associate with a poor relationship with money. So it really was like this multifaceted approach of earning more, making more, but also doing the work on the healing side.
I love the notion that this is a constantly evolving process. And clearly I'm a year or two older than you. And I will just tell you that it is still a constantly evolving process. Learning, and you're never done, but it's always towards a better place and self-recognition. Raquel, can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Well, when I think about the start of my money journey, I think about what my parents could invest in. And my parents couldn't invest in stocks. They couldn't invest in bonds. Honestly, the only investments and assets really that they could invest in were my education. And I thank God every day for that. Although I've had to work through some trauma in relation to achievement, because I feel like we all have some level of childhood trauma that relates to how we engage with money. I found the positive side of that coin, being able to actually give back to others, give of my asset of an education to others' education. And that's why I really do believe that education is the key to empowerment, and why I love that Savvy Ladies and even all of us are doing this in our own individual ways. My journey started in the classroom as a financial education teacher. And even though I had to counter this belief that I was raised with, that if you grow up and get a job with benefits, you'll be okay. Reality told me that I wasn't okay. I was still part of that 74-ish% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And that's when I had to have my first mindset shift, to not only realize the value that I inherently had, but also realize that I had the opportunity to build upon that value. For me, that decision led to learning how to invest. It took me about 5,000 hours and counting to learn how to profitably invest. And thankfully, that led to me paying off my student loans from investing. But as Lisa mentioned, you can have positive habits, but you can still have an unfulfilled mindset. So that second mindset shift was removing those limiting beliefs and understanding that even though I was creating impact in the classroom and then through my workbooks, I didn't have to have a limit on my impact or my income. So now I was able to shed that and serve through my current business For Our Last Names, where we're really tackling that financial wellness gap and how that holds us back from building wealth. And of course, through Savvy Ladies and supporting women and closing this gender wealth gap that we all unfortunately have to deal with, but we all have the power to change our mind and live in an abundance mindset.
In abundance, like you sign your emails, I've heard. I love that. And any of you can take this question, but before we go on, what do we mean by a financially healthy mindset? Like for the people who are listening, let's define our terms. Like what do we mean by that? Can I ask anybody to?
I'm happy to
jump
hop
in.
in. Oh, go ahead.
Sure. So I think a healthy financial mindset is just like a relationship with a friend or a loved one. What defines a healthy relationship, right? The worst way to improve the relationship is to completely ignore it. First and foremost, you need to spend time with your finances. I really love the quote, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. The same is true for your cash inflow and outflow and the way you invest. You need to track your expenses and you need to be cognizant of what your financial picture looks like. I think oftentimes when there is a stress or we feel negatively about our finances, the default reaction is just to ignore it, which is absolutely the worst thing that you can do. You need to know how much you can invest at a regular cadence, but also the point is not to deprive yourself completely and not feel as if you can't spend at all, but to be intentional. And I think that's the key word, intentionality. And understanding that your money is there to serve your needs, but it's also set up to serve your needs in the future. So making sure that you have a long-term sustainable plan and you're not just taking care of yourself for today and for the short run, knowing that every time you invest, you're really providing yourself with long-term benefits and you're watching out for your future self and then also for your family, right? The goal is not to save as much as possible at once and then feel like you've deprived yourself, but it's really to feel as if when you're investing and taking care of your family, this is a way that you're providing that financial wellness to yourself. And it should feel similarly to going on a shopping spree and not feeling as if you're stuck in this vicious cycle where you're just guilt-ridden because you're overspending and you're not taking care of yourself and the people around you.
The Consumer Financial Protection Board actually has all of those elements in its definition of financial wellness, including, I mean, you would think it's the ability to pay your bills now, it's the ability to save, to be putting aside money for the future, but the one element that I love that they include is the ability to have enough money to have a little joy in your life now. You know, so that you're not depriving yourself, and that's an important piece of being financially healthy and having a financially healthy mindset. Raquel, what you wanted to weigh in too.
Yes, I'll just add to that the importance of even aligning a healthy money mindset, as I like to talk about it in my book, or a healthy financial mindset with things that we may already be familiar with in our professional spaces. So growth mindset, right? I remember the first time that I encountered that I had a fixed mindset, and a mindset, in short, where I didn't believe that I could grow, or I didn't really believe that the values and skills that I had could expand beyond where they were. And in understanding that a growth mindset that I could apply in the workplace and grow my skills in the workplace as a teacher, at first having terrible classroom management skills, kids running around the place, those could grow. That same type of mindset could apply to my finances. And that was one way I was able to start, and my clients were able to start unlocking their healthy money mindsets. I would also say that the more time that I spent in my mind instead of just in my body, that was also helpful to developing a long-term money mindset. In the Western world, we often are are so focused on our individualized culture and our individual bodies. So being able to take time to journal and ask myself, how have I felt when I faced a specific financial challenge? And then being able to be aware of that in the moment and plan ahead has been an indicator and a way for me to measure how am I actually responding over time to challenges within my own money situations. And that's grown a healthy money mindset.
That's great. And I think that one of the things that both Louisa and Raquel have done in their answers is given us like one practical tip to get started on the journey to a healthy mindset. You know, it's first of all to engage, like don't delegate, you have to engage just as you have to engage to be in a healthy relationship. And Raquel, if I can paraphrase, it's, you know, making that shift from I can't to I can. And that there's a mindset shift that you have to believe that you can take charge of your finances and to be more mindful about your money. Have I gotten that? Am I correctly reflecting that back to you?
I would say yes, that to not only know that you can, but that you should, and you not just that you could, but you actually should go for it to embrace those challenges. But I can't discount the importance of actually writing down and journaling. So when the next challenge comes, you can actually look back and see, wow, I've done this. And that can build your financial confidence, which as women, we often struggle with.
So I'm all about that. Like, I love the practicality of that tip. That's a very concrete thing that you can do and take away from this. Lissa, do you have one practical tip as you're getting started?
Absolutely. It's a little broad, but my tip that I tell everyone is to take the next smallest step. So anything that it just seems too big to tackle, like I want to get out of debt. All right, what is the next smallest thing you can do to get towards that? You can at least gather all your debt information in one place, right? Gather all the papers. That'll take you 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do. And it's taking you one step closer to that. Because a lot of times, you know, big financial goals, but also things like getting out of debt, they feel so huge. So if you can break it down into that smallest next step, I think there's really no excuse why you can't, you know, do that right after this panel.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Barbara?
I would say it's just two simple words: control and choice. Determine what you can control. Can you make any changes to your income? Maybe not. Maybe later. Maybe if you're getting additional education or more skills, you could change that income. But you can control your expenses. So you step back and you say, what on my expenses can I control? And you can make choices. And some of the choices, you give up something maybe a little today for something longer term for tomorrow, your short and long-term goals. And let's face it, ladies, you don't have to spend a lot of money to find joy. It can be in a book club. It can be in everyone, you know, bring something over to your place and have a cocktail party. Go out on a picnic, set up a scavenger hunt. There are all sorts of fun things we know as women how to do. You plan them for children, plan them for yourselves. It doesn't cost money to have fun.
So we've talked some already about the influences that bring us to the point that we are today, our community, our culture, our family. And I want to move us a little quickly through that because of time. And I think that there are some other things that we haven't addressed at all. But does anybody want to talk at all? Something that if there's something that you want to add before I move us on to community, about how the ways in which we were raised and the influences around us, whether it's our family and how money was managed in our family, our experiences growing up, you know, even the times in which we grew up, and we've touched some on culture and community. But does anyone want to talk about how to recognize those influences and understand how they inform the way you are with money? sometimes in a positive way, and sometimes in ways that may be limiting us and we want to change or make a shift. And I'll throw that open to anyone on the panel. We've all talked about this before, but we may have hit on it already. So anyone, family?
I'll just jump
have we
in.
done?
I was raised, I didn't know we were quote unquote poor because we had lots of family and friends around and it was great fun. It wasn't until I got older and I realized there wasn't money for my education. There was never money for another car. We had one that 4 people drove. I mean, there was never extra money. I had a girlfriend ask me once if I had to make my bed every day. And I said, yes, of course, you can't get in the front door unless I fold up the pull-out couch. So yeah, but to me, it was all fine. So I went from feeling like everything was great until then when I was on my own and thinking, oh my goodness, it's expensive to live. It's expensive to take care of myself, let alone, an entire family. And so I went through a period of being fearful because there was never extra or more, or I guess my material needs were not well developed because I thought I had plenty. So it was making those choices as to what do I want, how do I want to live today, and where do I want to be? So I was very goal oriented, and I didn't want to live in the same type of environment that I was raised in, and I didn't want to raise children in the future in that environment. So it was I was very ambitious, I guess, in setting my goals and reaching them. But I had fun along the way. But I've lots of fun with my friends. So it's just I did go through that fearful. I loved hearing Lissa talk about how it's an evolving, whole evolving, mindset. I remember when I turned 40 and I told my husband, if I have to walk it, dust it, or insure it, I don't want it. So I was done with stuff, no more stuff, because I'm just going to have to get rid of it someday. So no more stuff in my life. So there you go. Make it simple.
Yeah, I love that. It also just shows you, I had the same experience as a child, I'll tell you, that I didn't know we were poor until I went to college and got a Pell Grant, which was for low income families. Because if you grow up so it's not all about the actual number of dollars, although the number of dollars makes a huge difference. I don't want to minimize the struggles of lower income households, but there are ways to feel that you have more. And it's not all about a matter of household income. It's how you manage what you have. But the feeling of strain that I grew up with also affected how I managed money. So it's one of the threads throughout what everybody has said so far about the way we were raised in the community we grow up with is just to be mindful of it and look back and think about how those different things have influenced you. And speaking of community, one of the ways that that women can get more financially savvy and shift to a healthier mindset is to know who to turn to for advice, to build a community of people who can help you. And so I'd like to shift the conversation to how we do that. We talked some in our meetings about this notion of creating a personal money board. And I don't know if anybody wants to pick up that notion. Like, how do you surround yourself, whether it's friends or mentors or advisors, with people and information that will help you on this journey? Anybody want to take a crack at defining what we mean by a personal money board, and how do you find your people?
I can start with that. Yeah.
Sure.
So I think first and foremost, you want to make sure that you're educating yourself, right? Because just like going to a mechanic and they tell you, XYZ is wrong with your car. If you don't know anything about cars, you're going to just believe them and pay right off the bat. I know I've done that many times and got taken advantage of. Actually, I have my husband go in after I get a quote, and oftentimes he'll get quoted about half of what I get quoted. So I think first and foremost, it's understanding what your finances look like. And then I think oftentimes people think that wealth education is a result of having a lot of money, but oftentimes it's actually the opposite. Having wealth education actually helps you accumulate money a lot faster. When building out a team, I think it's important to understand that first, 95% of women strongly agree that the financial services industry wasn't built for women in mind. And actually the other 5% don't disagree, they just feel neutral about it. So having women typically, I think, is important, or at least somebody who will really understand the needs of women, which is making sure that they understand that women tend to live longer. We also unfortunately tend to make less over our lifetime, as Barbara noted, even sometimes for the same job. So making sure that you surround yourself with the right CPAs, the right financial advisor. And if that's not something that is financially feasible, educating yourself and then outsourcing a lot of these like investment decisions. There's a lot of passive portfolios that have become available over the recent years that even 10 years ago, what you would pay would be closer to a 1% fee, and now you're paying closer to like 10 basis points. So you're paying a very low fee to have your money invested. So making sure that you really, if it's not specific people, that you are working with the right companies. And this is like a Fidelity, a Charles Schwab, where you can just kind of outsource your decisions. You set up your budget, you understand how much you can invest monthly. So my expenses are X, my income is Y, that differential is $100, $150. And it really, if you can invest more, perfect. But you can really start off with the small steps, as Lissa was talking about. You don't necessarily have to have a big chunk to start off with, but making sure that you're just choosing the right platforms that work for you. And if you're going to work with a CPA or an advisor, that they understand the needs of women.
Well, and literally, I mean, just you can get started investing, and you're talking about like robo advisors and just going into mutual funds and things that are sort of set up in a portfolio for you. But it's, I mean, there are funds that you can start off with that are as little as $250, or maybe even less if you sign up for automatic investing, where you might put $50 a month aside.
Exactly.
So the cost of starting to invest can be relatively low. I want to talk a little bit about where we get our information, as well as who we get it from. So Lissa, I'm looking at you. There are so many people, especially Gen Z and millennials, who get their financial advice from social media, particularly TikTok and YouTube. And there are a lot of people like me who, have been skeptics of the quality of that information. In fact, there's a lot of schlock, but there's a lot of good information too. So can you talk a little bit about, about that, how you tell the good information from the bad, and a smart way to use social media? I don't think we want to tell people not to. We want to tell them how to use it well.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a very important topic, because I read somewhere, there's a recent survey that said, I think 3 out of 4 Gen Zers turn to social media like TikTok to learn about finance, which is a very high number of people. And I think that it's kind of a mixed bag, because there's also a catch-22, right? Like, in order to navigate what's good information versus bad, you have to have a little bit of financial literacy to do that. But how do you get that financial literacy in order to do that if that's where you're turning to learn. I personally, like, I am a YouTuber and a TikToker myself. I see the whole gamut. There are definitely very smart, educated people, both with and without credentials, who are able to teach very well on the internet. And I think there are great resources there. I also think there are a lot of terrible, bad actors who, you know, whether it's for their own financial gain or just because they think they're right and can't see beyond that, also are very convincing. So it is kind of the wild, wild west. I would say a couple tips that I have to navigate that whole landscape if you do choose to learn from people on the internet. First and foremost, if it's educational, if someone's explaining how something works or a method to try, the pros and cons of a product, a service, a thing, take that with a grain of salt like you would any other education. I think it's great to learn from several sources, because if 3, 4, 5 people are telling you to build an emergency fund, it's probably, you know, something very common to do. Something that is on the other end where you can start to spot the bad actors is, for example, when people give direct investing advice, when they're telling you ticker symbols of exact things to buy. That doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't have those things in your portfolio, but it is a very, very, very limited, narrow view of what you can do for your finances. And at the end of the day, when it's one person talking to many, they can't truly give you the best financial advice because they don't know your own personal situation. So I think when it leans more educational, learning, feeling motivated, accountability, and you follow a couple of different people, you'll kind of protect yourself because you'll have multiple perspectives.
Do you have particular accounts that you would recommend?
Me, no, I'm just kidding.
In addition to you, I should have that, of course.
I have a ton. I actually, on my YouTube channel tomorrow morning, there's a video that I am posting called 38 resources for 38 money resources for women of color. Anyone can use these resources, but it's in honor of my 38th birthday this weekend. And so I have a lot of book recommendations, podcasts, blogs, Instagrammers, TikTokers, YouTubers that I've vetted, that I know and love. So yeah, if you want to check that out, I'll have that out tomorrow.
That sounds great, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
I remember 38 vaguely. Are there other resources that people want to recommend for, you know, either for particular people or types of people who you want to rely on for financial advice or places to learn? Barbara, anything?
Well, the old-fashioned ways are, you know, you can read a book, you can take a class at the community college. So, I mean, those are all available, right? So that's there for those that like to use books or paper, aren't as comfortable on social media. But if they have a background, as Lissa said, you kind of need some basics before you can really engage. So having those basics, then going into maybe social media, knowing that, you know, you really should have a budget, you should have an emergency fund, some real basic things. You should be investing in your 401k, right? I mean, all the shoulds that some of the basic financial professionals would tell you to do. And so once you get those down, then go for it, right? When you have extra money, when you feel you have some extra, then, you know, you can take a little bit more risk.
I really love, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Louisa. No, please.
Really quickly, I really love Ellevest, which is a financial company that was built by women for women. So the CEO and founder actually was executive of Bank of America. And she focuses a lot about the differences between how we typically invest and how men typically invest. As a side note, actually, a lot of research has shown that women typically have better investment returns over the long run. There was a few studies, one by the University of California, Berkeley, and then one done by Fidelity. And it showed that on average, we have half a percentage point to 1 percentage point per year of additional return than our male counterparts. And that was largely driven by the fact that we don't trade as much. So we trade 50% less. So that's one of many of the research studies that they have posted on their sites. And I think it's important to highlight those differences and also make women feel as if the financial industry is geared towards them, right? Because we typically tend to be the caretakers. We typically tend to serve all of these different roles. And that means that our financial plans over the long run look vastly different. And I think Ellevest does a really good job of sharing resources on that end.
And they also share the number of companies that have women on boards, which also have superior returns. So thank you for bringing that up, Louisa.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's that really important takeaway here is that what tends to hold us back is lack of confidence, not lack of ability. Like when we step up to the plate, we are great at this stuff. We just have to convince ourselves of that. And so I'm looking at the time, and I know that we want to leave room for Q&A. So I'd love to just maybe we can go around and talk and have one takeaway, one practical tip. You've already given us many, but talk about how we build that confidence, whether it's getting over the fear of making a mistake, but understanding that that's our greatest obstacle. It's not ability, it's confidence. So maybe Raquel, can you start us off?
Absolutely. I'll just quickly say something in relation to the last comment. Women-founded companies are doing amazing things, whether it's Ellevest, even my team at For Our Last Names, both my co-founder and I are quite literally working to launch this fall a tool that not only heals the financial traumas that we have and educates the individual, but also empowers them by connecting them to non-predatory vetted financial professionals. So absolutely shouting out all of the women in tech, women in fintech and ed tech, and also sharing that I'm very excited to help solve that gap that we're discussing that causes so many people issues in building wealth. In terms of practical advice that I just love to leave with everyone, number one, we are our best asset. And when we realize that, as we mentioned earlier, that we can, that we are our best asset, we can grow in any trait. We can grow our investment portfolios. We can grow in stocks and real estate. We can grow our communities as well. I would be remiss to end this conversation without speaking to personal finance and financial literacy in a context of communal liberation. It's not just about what we're doing for ourselves, but also what we're doing for our last names. So as you're journeying in your journeys and recognizing that you are your best asset and building your budgets and building your financial team, keep in mind that we are all interconnected with the values that we have and that we share. And the more that we can actually engage in collectivism rather than just individualism, the more that we can actually build generational wealth and heal and build bridges instead of burn them.
Lissa, I'm going backwards now. I started alphabetically in one order, and I'll end the other way.
Mine is more of a way of thinking about money, and something that I always like to talk about is starting to view money as a tool, which kind of requires you to, in some way, shape, or form, detach emotions from it. Like I think of it like a hammer, right? You can use a hammer to smash a window in. But you could also use a hammer to put up a pretty picture on the wall. So when you can start to detach any negative emotions from this tool of money, it helps you see it a lot clearly, and also in the long run helps you make better financial decisions without feeling debilitated from it or the lack of it.
Louisa?
Yeah, so I don't feel like it's a surprise that we feel like we have a low confidence in the financial literacy section, just because it's what we are told constantly is that we're bad with money. The old adage, like the wife just spends all the money, the husband just makes all of the money, and that we're overspending on silly items like clothing, makeup, and coffee. But I think it's really important to look at the research. A consumer expenditure survey by the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually found the complete opposite, that typically men spend more on average. They just do it in different areas like technology and cars. And then I think it's really important to understand that just simply because we are underplaying what our abilities are doesn't necessarily mean that our abilities are lower than men. And that's just, I mean, I think we've heard of different examples, even in the career section, where women will apply to a job only if they have all of the qualifications, whereas men, if they have a limited set of the qualifications, will go ahead and confidently apply. So I think it's really understanding the research, knowing that women overreport what they think they don't understand, where in the other side of the coin, they're actually oftentimes performing better than men in the financial literacy section. So I don't think it's something that is led by women. It's just simply, unfortunately, what society has told us for a long time. We're bad with women. We're bad with money. So making sure that you understand the research and you educate yourself properly and know that it's not, that lack of confidence is not internal. It's something that we've internalized from our external viewpoint, from both society and, you know, what we constantly hear from other people.
And Barbara?
I think to build confidence, it's just, you know, 3 basic things. You have that control on how much you can save, how much you can spend. And the one piece we haven't talked much about tonight, and it's very important in both my practice and our value system and our families, and that's how much you give. Because if you can give, whether it's giving, and sometimes you have to understand you're going to take risk. Maybe it's investing in a woman's startup business. Maybe that's how you want to redirect some of your finances. So between that and charitable giving that makes you feel good about what you can do for others, builds your own confidence. So helping others helps yourself.
I love that. Love that idea. Judy, we can go on and on. I mean, we have lots more questions, and there's such richness in all of those end tips. I'd be happy to follow up, but I know that we wanted to leave time for questions and there isn't much time. Do we have questions?
Sure. No. Does anyone have any questions? You can drop them into the chat or come off mute and ask your question. Any questions? I'm not seeing any at the moment coming through on the chat.
Okay. Well, then we can continue our conversation for 6 minutes, but please, by all means, if you have questions for any one of our panelists,
Exactly, please.
you know, just drop it into the chat or speak up. So I'm going to give it 30 seconds, just because people may not have known that was
Exactly.
necessarily
I
coming.
see Deb Caddy out there. So hi, do you have any questions or thoughts you would like to share with the panel, Deb?
Thank you. Thank you. No, this has been really good. I wish there was a way locally. I'm in San Diego, California. You know, I hold, like, for instance, in my business of mortgage financing, I hold seminars for first-time buyers and things like that. And, you know, maybe I'd like to segue into utilizing the Savvy Ladies platform, some kind of local education, you know, because I help a lot of first-time home buyers. And one of the first things I have to deal with is looking at their credit and working on their credit and things like that. So I give a lot of advice also within Savvy Ladies on debt management, marriage and money. Those are, Tracy could verify this. Those are the 2 categories I usually am drawn to for taking on new cases. But no, this has been great. It's been so nice to see all of you. And
there are some questions too, and just segueing from what you just said. I mean, we don't have that much time, but maybe we can squeeze in a couple. what is the best advice? Dana wants to know, what is the best advice for someone going through a great divorce and now taking full responsibility for my finances? That's such a common situation, and can be very daunting. Anybody want to jump in on that?
We see that quite often, and unfortunately, typically what happens is that the man has taken control of the finances throughout their life, and the wife is usually set in a role where she doesn't make any of the decisions, and she's not invited into the conversations, unfortunately. So it's really quite daunting. It's like feeling as if you have some sort of inheritance without the financial education. So first and foremost, the most important thing to do is to actually make sure that you are speaking to somebody who's well-versed in financial planning, whether that's some sort of advisor. I know sometimes there are a lot of companies out there or independent planners who actually just have a set fee for creating a one-time plan and then showing you what you need to change going forward. But making sure you understand what's that income that you can live off of your assets, understanding what you're entitled to if you are receiving future payments, and understanding your full financial picture. And that goes with speaking to somebody who's qualified. Typically, I would recommend working with a CFP or somebody who really understands the intricacies of, you know, if you have a prenup, what does that look like? How does that change what you are entitled to and things of that sort. So making sure that you're speaking to a professional is really important, and then educating yourself, of course, because if you weren't in that role of making the money decisions in your family, for example, if my husband and I were to get divorced, he would be needing a lot of financial education because I'm the one that manages all of our finances. So if you weren't in that role before, making sure that you educate yourself is definitely the most important, and speaking to a professional.
And I would add, take a breath. Don't make any
Yeah.
big decisions in that initial period that's highly emotional. You want to be able to take the time to educate yourself, know what your finances are about, maybe find that professional, which is a great segue to, if we have time for one more question, we have a few that are all around the notion of how do you find a great financial professional? How do you find someone who you can really trust? Anyone want to take that? We have quite a few questions around that.
I would say ask friends that are using financial professionals, find a little bit about the company or the individual they work with, interview several of them, find out, and you can go on to, I think it's Let's Make a Plan. It's the CFP site that will tell you the questions that you should be asking when you go in for an interview. So do your research, have your questions ahead of time, and interview several, and find out basic, also do you feel it's someone you could trust? You're going to get some feel from the person. And if it's just you alone versus, like, I've never, ever had any of my clients, I've never, ever met with just the husband or just the wife. It's a couple, because they both have to know. So if someone, is only talking to you and doesn't want to talk to your husband, or your husband's found a planner that doesn't invite you in, run. Find someone that understands what needs to be done together.
And trust your gut. Like, if they're not
your gut.
treating you with respect, or as if you're knowledgeable, or you just don't feel comfortable, this
Right.
is a very intimate relationship, and this is about your money. This is about your well-being. So
Here's one of the things you'll know right away. If they ask you questions and they want to learn about you, they probably are interested in you. If they just stand up at some slideshow and only want to talk about themselves, again, run.
Yeah.
Because it's about you. Their job is to take care of you.
And your job, just because I know that we're at time, your job is you. right? Like, you know, remember to put yourself first and learning about this. And that if you take one thing away from this, from what all of these terrific panelists have said, it's that we are so much more capable and skillful than we give ourselves credit for. We can do this. We can often do it better than the men in our lives. So just get on with it. And Judy, I'll toss to you. I think we're at time.
Yes, you are right on time. So I want to thank everyone. And I think also my big takeaway is, as a female, as a woman, never to abdicate your control of your money. So when you are going to a financial advisor, make sure they are speaking to you. Make sure that, you know, you can have your bucket of money, his bucket of money, and combined family. And so have those conversations, feel comfortable with it, or get, as Barbara and everyone is saying, move on and find that next person. Many women, especially who are going through divorce or find themselves widowed, typically end up changing their financial advisor because it had been an advisor that their spouse had chosen, and they feel more comfortable finding a new one. So that's just sort of the data that we see out there. But again, you make your own choice that is most comfortable with you. I want to thank everyone for joining. This has been terrific, really. Thank you so much to our panelists. Hopefully we've dropped all of the information so you have links to follow them all. And happy birthday, 38th birthday. And I love that you're linking that to 38 tips, Lisa. So that's pretty amazing. I think you're going to get 20 plus followers. So thank you again for everyone joining. And, you know, if you want to, please feel free to go to the Savvy Ladies helpline, submit your question there as well. And we're happy to match you with a financial professional. You've seen many of them here. Lisa is one of them. Deb Caddy, who I called out, is another one. Please use the helpline. It is there for you to feel most comfortable and get your answers to the questions you have. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Great night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Judy.
everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great night.